evening, or if you would just like a refresher, this will be available on the OFSL website. So please feel free to take a look at that if need be, but we'll go ahead and get started. If we have not met yet, my name is Jen Toomey. I'm an assistant director in the Office of Fraternity and Sorority Life at Villanova. I joined you all for our last parent and family webinar, our Fraternity and Sorority Life 101, but I'm excited to jump in tonight to Panhellenic Recruitment 101. I'm assuming that the folks that are with us this evening have students that are interested in one of our Panhellenic organizations or interested in that recruitment process that takes place this spring. So that is what we will spend the bulk of our time talking about this evening. It's a little bit of a, not a little bit, it's a deep dive into the recruitment experience and try to answer as many questions as I can. Sarah is with us tonight as well. She'll be answering some questions in the Q&A box as those come in. And we'll kick it off. We'll get started. Our agenda tonight, I want to start off by talking a little bit about Villanova's role and the recruitment experience and RFM, which stands for Release Figure Methodology. That's the algorithm that we use in the recruitment experience. We will then jump into some pre-recruitment information. So all things that you might need to know or want to know leading up to recruitment, things that are taking place this fall, eligibility requirements, communication, all of those different pieces. We'll chat through that. Then we'll jump into move in and kickoff, that very first day of our recruitment experience. And then we'll run through all three of our rounds: sisterhood, philanthropy, and preference. We'll talk a little bit about the MRABA, or Membership Recruitment Acceptance Binding Agreement, and then bid day, and then additional opportunities for membership if that is applicable for students that are still interested in joining after the recruitment experience is over. So that is our agenda. We'll go ahead and jump into that. Want to start off with Villanova's role in the recruitment experience and RFM, or like I said, Release Figure Methodology. So we'll jump into that just by starting off with the idea that Villanova is home to 8 national women's sororities. All of those organizations are recognized by the National Panhellenic Conference, or NPC. So these orgs are standalone entities, right? They are corporations that exist outside of Villanova. They have a headquarters and they oversee a multitude of chapters all across the United States and Canada. So the chapters that are on our campus are extensions of those national organizations, and as such, they're required to follow the policies of that national organization, as well as the National Panhellenic Conference's policies and procedures and Villanova's policies and procedures. So I created a little flow chart here for us just to help kind of map this out a little bit if you're a visual friend. So the NPC is the governing entity of all women's organizations, women's sororities at the national level. So they oversee the sorority headquarters. And then they also oversee a local Panhellenic on our campus. So a local Panhellenic, or college Panhellenic, is made up of women from the organizations on our campus. And that Panhellenic governs the chapters at Villanova. So the sororities on our campus are kind of governed by both their headquarters, which are governed by the National Panhellenic Conference, and the National Panhellenic Conference also governs the College Panhellenic, who then also governs the sororities on our campus. So it's a little bit of a roundabout flow chart there, but all of that is basically to say that the organizations on our campus and our campus itself is required to sometimes follow policies, procedures, use systems and processes that are not homegrown. They are not unique to Villanova. We did not create them, but we are required to follow some of those expectations. So when we think about the organizations on our campus, we often describe it as a co-parenting relationship. They have to follow both the guidelines and expectations from their sorority headquarters, and they have to follow the guidelines and expectations that are local to Villanova, our office policies and procedures, and the College Panhellenic's policies and procedures. So it's a two-way relationship. We kind of joke that we have shared custody because we do jointly support these organizations and these students that are on our campus. Our role in the recruitment process is to help the students facilitate it. It is not to create the process. It is to help support them as they execute the process. So we didn't create the matching system, nor are we strong advocates for it if we're being transparent. But the existence of these national organizations on our campus do come with some of these policies and requirements that we can't just disregard. So I say that, one, to just provide some context for y'all, and two, because we often hear from folks who may be disappointed with their recruitment experience that They had hoped that an institution like Villanova would do more. I can assure you that myself and our staff and the students that run this process, we do everything that we can in order to provide your students with a holistic and satisfactory membership experience. And if they're ever in a situation where we can do more, I want to give you my full guarantee that we will do more. If we have the capacity to help in a situation, we absolutely will. However, there are certain circumstances and situations in which we don't have full control over that experience, such as recruitment. And so I want to just try to create a level of understanding there of what our scope of control is with this process and what our role is in it. And it's really just to help the students facilitate that process. There's nothing more that we want than your students to have a good Villanova experience. And so if there are things that we can do, we will do them. And if there are things that we can't do, I hope that that comes with a level of patience and understanding that these are national organizations. And so we're kind of held to some of those expectations as well, even though we may not always agree with the execution of that process. One of those pieces that we're talking about, right, is the release figure methodology, or RFM. At its core, this is an algorithm that is used to match PNMs with organizations at a maximum capacity, right? Maximum number of PNMs are matched in an equal distribution to our chapters. So what that essentially means is that all of our organizations we anticipate, expect, and this process is designed to ensure that all of our chapters receive about the same number of new members in the spring semester. I should also backtrack and say PNM is potential new member. So those are likely your students, they are potential new members of the organization. So that is always that's the goal of that algorithm, and that's how it's executed and utilized for our campus. All campuses across the nation that have a Panhellenic sorority recruitment process utilize this process. Utilize this algorithm. So want to again make that clear, it's not a Villanova product, anything like that. It is utilized all across the system, all across the nation, and is a recruitment software system. The challenge in using this program, this algorithm, comes when every single PNM that participates in our process wants to join the same 3, 4, 5 chapters out of the 8 that we have. The algorithm simply will not take 600 PNMs and distribute them just to those 3, 4, or 5 chapters, right? Nor do we want that to be the case. That would be a wildly large recruitment experience for those organizations. So with that in mind, it is vitally important that our PNMs, that your students keep an open mind about their sorority experience. I promise you that each of the organizations that are on our campus are home to some truly stellar, kind-hearted, human beings who are really passionate about their sorority experience. And I know that your student can find a home in any one of those organizations. All of our chapters are around 190 members this fall, and in the spring after recruitment, they'll be close to 250. There will be some members of each sorority that your student will probably not get along with, and there will be women in each of those sororities that can make that organization home for your student. Everywhere we go in life, we find pockets of people that are our people, right? I work at Villanova. I love my staff members and all of the folks that I work with, but I've been in jobs and situations where I like some, but not all, right? So I find my people, and that makes that experience positive. It's not always that you're going to actually have 250 brand new best friends. I think we can understand that that's probably not a realistic situation, but I know, I'm confident 100% that there are women in each of our organizations that can help your student make that organization feel like home for them. And so that's what's important to remember as we're going through the recruitment experience, is that there's a home for everyone in the community, as long as we're keeping an open mind about what that experience looks like for them. My ask of you is that you help your student keep an open mind and help them manage those expectations appropriately. This process is designed, as you can see, to ensure that the maximum number of PNMs join an organization. So if we're going into this process with the understanding that any sisterhood experience is going to be a great sisterhood experience, then the likelihood that they have a successful recruitment experience is very high. If we go into this process thinking I am only interested in chapter A, chapter B, and chapter C, then we're going to have to manage expectations throughout that experience, because that may or may not be their experience throughout the week. So that is my ask or my request of you, to remember and remind them this is about joining a sisterhood. This is not about joining XYZ chapter. The other thing that we see oftentimes, and this has become a problem as social media has continued its influence in our world, is misinformation on the internet. If you are a member of an organization yourself, if you have other children or nieces or nephews or aunts or uncles or family friends that are in organizations on other campuses or are alumni of organizations, if we're able, I would encourage them to refrain from sharing behind the scenes details or information that they perceive to be accurate about the experience. There is no figuring out the system. There is no rigging the algorithm. I'm going to be honest with you. This is my 8th Panhellenic recruitment experience. I don't have the system figured out. It is facilitated by this algorithm. It is not manually conducted. So there is no figuring it out. One woman changing one thing about her one recruitment piece or ranking is not going to change the system around her. And so I would encourage her always, when she is going through the recruitment week, to keep an open mind and to ask our staff if she has questions about the experience. Ask our staff if she has questions about the process or the procedure. We see a lot of women who are disappointed because they thought they did something that they perceived to be giving them an advantage, and it didn't play out the way that they anticipated. And then they're frustrated by that misinformation that they've received from various outlets. So if you could also just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that there is no figuring it out, there is no maneuvering it or tricking it or any of those pieces, and to encourage your students to ask our staff if they have questions about that, okay? From there, I want to go ahead and jump into some information about things that are happening before the recruitment experience starts. We're going to go kind of chronologically through the remainder of the program. And so we'll start with this fall. In our last webinar, we did talk a little bit about information sessions that would be available to students. So want to let you know that we do have those scheduled as well. We'll talk a little bit about legacy recommendation letters. Those are often questions that we get. And again, we'll talk a little bit about eligibility. One thing I do want to note is that we are a deferred recruitment campus, right? So that means that the actual recruitment week takes place in January, a week before the semester starts. However, that doesn't mean that your students should avoid the sororities during this semester. The point of us being a deferred recruitment campus is that students have time to generate some interest and gather information about the organizations on our campus. It's not to gatekeep them or to try to bar them from getting to know the sororities too soon. It's not dirty rushing to get to know women in the organizations on campus. While it's not required and you're not at a disadvantage if you don't get to know some of the chapters on campus this fall, it's definitely encouraged. That's okay. There's obviously lines and boundaries. We shouldn't be extending bids or taking folks to off-campus parties, things of that nature. But there is no rule around them attending the tabling events, the philanthropy events, the sisterhood events and programs that the chapters are doing every day on campus. If your student is interested in getting to know the organizations early, so that when they go into the recruitment process, they might feel a little bit more comfortable about kind of what to expect from that experience, that's a great way to do those things. Most of our organizations will advertise those events on their social media accounts. There is something happening every day. If it was feasible, we would send out an email every single day saying what they're doing, but there's just something popping up all the time. So the social media Instagram handles are going to be the best way for them to receive that information. All of your students also get an email every day called the Wildcat Newswire that has a list of events that are taking place on campus from student organizations. So that's another great way for them to stay connected to events and programs that are happening. We will have a fall information session hosted by our College Panhellenic on November 4th at 7 p.m. That will be done in person. But we are also trying to figure out some ways that we can live stream that, I believe also on Instagram, so that if there are folks that are unable to attend, they can go ahead and tune in after they're done with class or anything of that nature and still get the same information. A lot of the information that we'll be sharing here tonight is information that the students will get on that date as well. Our registration opens on November 1st. So that is coming up. We hope that you take some time over fall break to talk with your students a little bit about what their interest is in this experience so that they are able to kind of talk through any questions, concerns, all of those things with y'all before registration opens. It will close the last day of classes, which is December 13th. There is a registration fee for the program. It's $150 and it will be due at the time of registration. If for some reason your student is ineligible, that fee would be refunded to them as well. There's also a processing fee to pay online, so I just want to be transparent about that. So it's $150 plus it's somewhere between $3 and $4 that processing fee to use the online platform. So I want to be transparent about that expense as well. The next thing I want to jump into is legacy statuses and recommendation letters. Those are some questions that we got at Parent and Family Weekend, and so I wanted to make sure that we address those with y'all tonight too. We do collect information in the registration form that asks about any prior family member participation in recruitment. So we do collect the information of whether or not they are a legacy. It's really open-ended, so students can indicate if it's an aunt, if it's a sister, if it's a mom, if it's a grandma, a stepmom, any of those different family relations, and then any organization that they're a legacy of. So it could be organizations on our campus, or it could be other organizations. That's fine, whatever that student chooses to list. And this information is shared with chapters, so they have access to it. Legacy status is defined differently for every organization. So while being maybe having an aunt who is a member of an organization, that might make you a legacy for sorority A. That may not make you a legacy for sorority B. So if you have someone in your family who is an alum member or a current member of an organization, I would encourage you to look at their headquarters websites to see what qualifies as legacy status. If they don't know and they just put that their aunt is a member of this organization and technically that's not defined as legacy by that headquarters, it's no big deal, to be honest with you. But if you're curious and want to take a peek at that, that's an opportunity for you to look there. However, while they do recognize legacies, there are no legacy policies for any of our organizations. So none of our organizations require their chapters to invite a PNM to any rounds, or none of them require our organizations to give that PNM a bid just because she is a legacy. So there is no preferential treatment for anyone who is a legacy, essentially, is the short answer for that. So they're welcome to note that in their registration. Orgs will see it. But my understanding is that that doesn't weigh a whole lot into the decision-making process, especially given the fact that there are no national policies for legacies for any of the organizations that are on our campus. Similarly, we don't collect recommendation letters. There's no mechanism in our registration process, nor do we as staff or as a Panhellenic accept recommendation letters for any of our PNMs. This is really a move that we made in order to increase access for PNMs and to remove kind of some inequities in that process. We know that more and more students are coming to college and seeking higher education as first generation students. And so we don't want to place any of those women at any sort of disadvantage just because their parents, their sisters, their family members have not had access to higher education prior. So we don't accept recommendation letters or anything of that nature. You could try, if you're an adamant proponent of the recommendation letters, you're welcome to try to get it to the chapter, but they have, full transparency, have told me they don't read them. So up to you. Personally, I would generally not waste my time on this one. I would just let that go. Not going to be a game changer in any way for your student. The last thing I wanted to chat about on this slide is our eligibility requirements. We talked about this last time, but wanted to kind of reemphasize 12 completed credit hours. So we want students to have completed at least one full semester of collegiate work. So AP credits don't count, dual enrollment credits don't count. It's okay if your student is transferring in from another institution, but again, would need to see a full semester of collegiate credit hours, not dual enrollment credits. The 2.7 GPA, cumulative GPA, is a pretty strict requirement for our campus, and exceptions will not be made. So I want to make sure that that's clear. A 2.7 is the highest required GPA at the national level for any of our organizations. And so we have mirrored that then as such. Our minimum requirement for any interested woman to participate in our process is also a 2.7. All Villanovans are here because they are excellent students and great human beings, and all academic majors, all academic programs have been evaluated and weighted appropriately by our registrar's office. So GPAs will not be weighted or considered differently based on their field of study. I think that is sometimes a question that we get asked too, is if my student is in a harder major and their GPA is a little bit lower, can that be weighted or viewed a little bit differently? And so I want to make it clear that All of our programs have been vetted by our registrar's office and weighted appropriately. So whatever the cumulative GPA is, that's what we'll be operating off of. It's important to us that all of the women that participate in our process are eligible to join any organization that is participating in that process. So even if your student's GPA meets one or two of the organization's GPA requirements, the 2.7 is what we will be screening for and making those eligibility determinations off of. So just want to be transparent about that as well. Lastly, they're screened for their disciplinary standing. So we send a list to our Dean of Students office so that we can kind of just check in on those folks, see how they have been experiencing their collegiate experience so far. And honestly, most of the time, if there are hiccups here and there, we'll have a brief conversation with them just to check in, make sure they understand what kind of commitment they're making. If there aren't any egregious disciplinary concerns, then we will likely let them proceed through the process after having a conversation with some staff members about what expectations look like. The other piece that I want to note about eligibility requirements is that unfortunately we're working with some challenges this year related to the academic calendar and the timing of our recruitment program. So due to the time that our recruitment process takes up, right, it's a pretty time-consuming process. We do choose to run the program before classes start in the spring semester, so we are interfering with class schedules and things like that. This year, our spring semester starts about a week earlier than it has in the past. Typically, it has started the Tuesday after Martin Luther King Jr. Day, so we've had another week in there. This year, grades for the fall semester aren't due from faculty to the registrar's office until noon on Monday, January 6th. So the challenge that this poses for us is that our program is scheduled to have your students move back in on Tuesday, January 7th. Obviously, this is not ideal for you, for our students, for myself, but we don't have the capacity to ask the entire university to adjust the academic calendar for Panhellenic Recruitment. So I'll be notifying students, obviously, at their information session of this as well. It'll be in all of the registration forms, all of their confirmation emails. But I wanted to tell you all this information early on so that we can prepare and try to manage expectations as we go through that. So I fully expect and know that many of y'all live more than just a drive away. So I sincerely apologize for the tough spot that puts y'all in if you're booking flights. If there was anything that I could do to change this, I would for sure. But given the circumstances, the best that I can do is just try to be transparent in my communications and ask for that understanding and patience. My plan is to review and screen our PNMs for their disciplinary status in December so that we can clear that issue up then. And then we have been in communication with the registrar's office to ensure that they can run that report for me as soon as possible. Grades are due at noon, so my hope is that we can have that grade report that afternoon and that I can notify all PNMs of their eligibility status that afternoon or by the end of the day on Monday. However, they also have access to their grades too, so they could kind of check earlier on if they're able to. I understand that that's not great timing. I understand that hearing that you're ineligible the day before you move in is likely not a good experience. So again, just my apologies for that timing. And if there was anything that we could do to modify that, we would explore those options. But in lieu of that, just want to be transparent about the timeline. From here, I want to go ahead and jump into thinking about move-in and kickoff. I kind of teased this already, but PNMs can begin moving in on Tuesday, January 7th at 10 a.m. Your students should complete the early move-in form that is in their housing portal. So that way that they get their rooms kind of checked, but also get their wildcards turned on. I typically send a list to our housing and residence life staff as well, but this is a great way to just cover all our bases, make sure that they don't run into any hiccups when they arrive back to campus on the 7th. If you do live far away, if you live a flight away or multiple time zones and need to talk through potentially some alternative move-in options, I would just ask that your student reaches out to me and I could work through those concerns with them at that time. But they should all be moved in, ready to go for our kickoff that starts at 5 o'clock that night with their Rho Gamma group. The recruitment kickoff will be with their small group, and it's made up of about 12 PNMs and 1 Rho Gamma, so small ratios there, which is great. In that session, we'll review any changes to schedule, some logistical pieces for the remainder of the week, and the way that the matching system that we talked about previously is utilized so that your students are educated and informed about that as well. Our staff and our Panhellenic executive team will facilitate that presentation, and then the ROGAMs will have a small group meeting to answer questions and kind of get to know one another, and then they'll eat dinner as a group that night too. Because our program is taking place on campus this year, we'll also use some of that time, hopefully, to help them understand how to navigate the schedule. And if time permits and the weather isn't too awful, we'll hopefully have them walk that a little bit too, so they get comfortable finding and locating all of those buildings before the following day happen, or not following day, the in-person rounds happen later in the week. We start off our program with our sisterhood round. So we'll go ahead and jump into that. It is the first round. Parties begin bright and early at 9 a.m. on Wednesday, January 8th. All of our parties for this round take place over Zoom, and this round takes place over 2 days. Just because of the sheer number of folks that participate, it's safer to participate over Zoom so that we ensure that we're abiding by room capacities, things like that, keeping folks safe, and that we're able to move through the schedule quickly that way too. So although this round is on Zoom, we do still expect PNMs to move back in on that Tuesday prior to all of the in-person pieces. It's important to us that they're here to receive like counseling support from other PNMs, from the Rho Gammas, from our staff. And it also helps us avoid any weather issues that might come up if we're trying to travel in the middle of the week. It's much easier for them to, if there's travel issues early on in the week, we could do these Zoom rounds from home. But if you are far away and then weather hits and we can't get you here for the in-person rounds, that creates a little bit more of a challenge. So that is the plan there. On the first day, PNMs will visit 4 to 5 chapters with some breaks and a break for lunch as well. And then on the second day, they'll visit the remaining 2 or 3 chapters, depending on the breakdown of their schedule. Each party is 45 minutes with 15 minutes in between, and they'll have an opportunity to talk to probably about 3 or 4 sisters for about 5 minutes each. And the goal of this is to help them have, or help them be able to meet a variety of sisters and to talk about their interests, their involvement, and what they're hoping to get out of a sorority experience. Those are likely conversation topics that will take place during that round. We recommend that PNMs wear whatever, a nice top, something that is presentable on their top, but don't have to be anything too fancy. All of the chapter members will be wearing t-shirts that have some sort of organizational branding of some sort. And they for sure wear sweatpants and PJ pants. So it is okay to be casual on the bottom, just presentable, whatever makes them feel confident on top. So that would be good. At the end of both days, once they have completed all of their parties, they'll be asked to select their top 5 organizations in no particular order. So they do not have to rank them or anything like that. They'll just let us know what their top 5 organizations are. They will be asked to rank their bottom 2 organizations. So top 5, and then organization 6, and then organization 7. So these are in no particular order, and then these 2 are in rank order. Please keep in mind that these are preferences. We're asking them to submit preferences. So they are not able to cut or, leave or say that they're not going to join a chapter. They can submit their preferences in this program. And so while those organizations might be lower on their preferences, they could still be invited back to that organization or organizations in the following rounds. So I want to make sure that that is a clear distinction too, because I think sometimes there's some confusion thinking that they cut a certain organization. So how could they be invited back? So they submit their preferences after each round, which we take in consideration in that algorithm. The PNMs will be notified of their invitations for our next round that evening. So on the evening of that Thursday. And their Rho Gamma will be available to answer any questions, provide any support, any of those things. But wanted you all to know that timing too, since you were also support systems for these friends, and they likely just want to share what the experience has been like for them. So sometime in that evening, likely around 9 or 10 o'clock-ish, somewhere in that ballpark. We want to make sure that we give them enough notice because parties start bright and early the next day for philanthropy round at 8 a.m. This is when our in-person parties begin. So those, again, in person taking place on campus. PNMs can be invited back to a maximum of 5 organizations during this round, and they'll know obviously who they're visiting for this round the night before so they can prepare. It's normal to be invited back to any number of rounds or any number of parties. So while they could be invited to a maximum of 5, there are PNMs that are invited back to 4, to 3, to 2, and to 1 on this round. So a wide variety of schedule options here. All schedules are good schedules because all organizations are strong organizations that offer a strong sisterhood experience. In the philanthropy parties, they will likely sit through a brief presentation about the different philanthropic initiatives that the organizations are a part of. Each of our organizations has a national philanthropic partner that they support through their fundraising efforts and service initiatives throughout the year. So they'll talk a little bit about those organizations, obviously. And then the PNMs will still have an opportunity to talk one-on-one with 2 or 3 sisters. Again, maybe 5 to 7 minute conversations each to talk about what sorts of things they're passionate about, service initiatives or philanthropic causes that are important to them, all of those different things. So this round is really centered around that element of philanthropic initiatives. During this round, we recommend that PNMs wear attire that they feel comfortable and confident in. This is an in-person round, so they'll be walking. So we would recommend comfortable footwear. Booties are great for the winter if that's their footwear style. But the general aesthetic of the round, as described by our current members, is like brunch attire, or Thanksgiving dinner, or Christmas Eve dinner, something along those lines. So you're feeling nice, comfortable, confident, cute, all of those good things. But this is not a cocktail attire occasion. So you can go ahead and save that outfit for another round. After they complete their parties on this day, they'll again be asked to select their top 2 preferences in no particular order. And then if they visited more than 2, they'll be asked to rank those remaining organizations in preference order. So they'll select 2 and they'll rank any remaining organizations in preference order. They could have visited 1 organization during this round as well. So obviously if they visited 1 organization, then they can rank that 1 organization here as well. Again, preferences could still be invited back to any of the organizations that they visited during this day. PNMs will then be notified of their invitations for the next round the following morning around 8 a.m. And the ROGAMA, again, will be there to provide some assistance, answer any questions, all of that. They typically get phone calls from their ROGAMAs right around the time the invitations are released, just to check in, see if there's any questions, review the schedule, make sure friends know where they need to be and at what times, all of those different pieces. So that's available too. After philanthropy round, we jump into our preference round, our final round of recruitment. This starts at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. So there's some time there. They're notified at 8. They've got a little bit of time to eat breakfast, get ready before they jump into everything. We wanted to push that day start time back a little bit since they won't be notified until that morning. So these rounds also take place in person on campus, and they're about 60 minutes each. So it's our longest round because we want to make sure they get the most time with one another as we go into this last round. PNMs can visit a maximum of 2 chapters during this round. Again, it is normal to be invited back to 2. It is normal to be invited back to 1. All schedules are good schedules because all of our organizations offer a robust membership experience. During this round, PNMs will likely hear more intimate speeches about what the organization really means to its members. They'll have an opportunity to talk one-on-one with a sister that they had likely already met earlier in the week and had really had a good connection with. And it's our most intimate round. It is kind of simulates a ritual. So it's kind of an introduction for our PNMs to get to see that side of the sorority experience. So this attire for this round is where we would recommend that cocktail attire if your student feels inclined. Doesn't mean that it has to be a dress. Many of our women wear pantsuits, jumpsuits, pants, blazers, all of that fun stuff. So whatever they feel most comfortable and confident in is appropriate for this. It will be January. It will be cold. They do not have to wear a cocktail dress if they are not interested in being cold. Me personally, always cold. Likely would not wear a cocktail dress myself. So whatever they feel their best in is what I want them to wear. After they complete their party or parties on that day, we'll be asked to submit their preferences for the final time using a form called the Membership Recruitment Acceptance Binding Agreement. So we'll jump into that. It is a mouthful, so apologies for that. Again, not a system that we created, but one that we work within. So this agreement is their final selection process. It is a contract between them and the National Panhellenic Conference. If you'll remember, they govern all women's organizations nationally, and that's whose process we facilitate on our campus. So it's a contract between them and the NPC. This is not a copy of the form, but this is a cheat sheet that they will have access to help guide them through that submission process. So I want to walk through that a little bit with you as well. But first, let you know that this form is completed with staff members only. So if your student has questions about this form before signing it, ask us. Please encourage her to ask us. While her Rogama, her big sister, her friend at another campus, her aunt may have had a recruitment experience themselves, it is so important that they have accurate information specifically related to signing this form. So please encourage her to ask our staff members. We are more than happy. I would be ecstatic to answer any and all questions related to this form. So please encourage her to ask that. On our cheat sheet here, we have some options to see what all the routes are. So the top half of it indicates if you attended 2 preference events. So if your student was able to attend 2 preference round parties, then she has a variety of options here. In option A, if she is willing to accept a bid from either organization, then she will read and sign the MRABA and rank those 2 chapters. She is going to receive a bid on bid day. Her first choice is not guaranteed. If you go to 2 chapters and you rank 2 chapters, 99.999999999 times out of 100, you are going to receive a bid the next day. It does not increase your chances of getting your first choice. It does increase your chances of getting a bid. So if she went to 2 chapters and she likes both chapters, she should list both chapters and she will receive a bid from one of those 2 chapters. That's path A. Path B, she went to 2 chapters and she's willing to accept a bid from one of them. She is not willing to accept a bid from the other one. What she should do is read inside her NRABA and understand that by limiting the options on that ranking form or intentionally single preferencing, that limits your chances of receiving a bid. Okay, so if you go to 2 chapters and you list 1 chapter, you could receive a bid on bid day. You could also not receive a bid on bid day. Last year, this is where we saw the majority of our releases, meaning that a woman was truly cut from the recruitment process. Throughout the week, we only released 3 women total until bid day, in which we released about 30 because they opted to intentional single preference. So we talk through that with them. We go through this form with them. We answer all of their questions as they're signing the form. And so they know that that's an option. You could receive a bid, you could not receive a bid. So I want to make sure that that is clear. If you go to 2 and you list 2, you're likely getting a bid. Lightning would have to strike in order to not receive a bid. In option B, you went to 2 chapters, you list 1 chapter, you might receive a bid, you may be released from the process. So those are the two options there. Option C, she goes through the week, she goes to 2 chapters, and she's not interested in joining either one of them. She can withdraw from recruitment at that time, and then she would be eligible for other alternative joining experiences, either COB or signing up for recruitment next year, any of those things. So those are their 3 options if they attend 2 preference events, okay? If your student attends 1 preference event, then she has 2 options. She can, if she's willing to accept that bid from that chapter, then she will read inside her MRABA, and she's getting a bid from that chapter the next day, right? So we don't know who she's gonna get a bid from. If she went to 1 chapter, she says she's interested in joining that 1 chapter, she's joining that 1 chapter tomorrow, okay? In both scenarios, you'll notice if I went to 2 and I list 2, I'm getting a bid. If I go to 1 and I list 1, I'm getting a bid. That concept is called maximizing your options. This process is designed, this algorithm is used to place women in organizations. So if they complete the process in good faith, if they have an open mind and understand that it is about joining a sorority and joining a sisterhood and having that experience is more important to them than which letters go on the t-shirt, they're going to join an organization at the end of this week, at the end of this recruitment process. That's really the short story of it. If your student attended one preference event and she's not willing to accept a bid from that chapter, though, she does not have to. She can also withdraw from recruitment at that period as well, and she's eligible to participate in COB or do recruitment next year or participate in other joining options as well. So those are the two options depending on how many invitations they've received for that preference round. Again, these are all pieces that we go through with them, but I want to make sure that you all are aware as well. Always, 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 if they have questions, send them to us. Please send them to us. We are more than happy to answer them. But I would highly recommend in all circumstances that they maximize their options. I think it is important that if they want to join an organization, then this is the way to do that. However, if they feel strongly that they would not be happy in one of those organizations, they are not required to. They also have that option too. So all options are good options, but want to make sure that they're informed about what making those different choices mean for their community. The last thing then that we'll jump into is bid day. The following day after our preference round is when we'll celebrate our bid day after we have signed the MRABAs and got all of that matching and everything done. Bid day takes place in person on campus on Sunday, the 12th. So our PNMs will all gather together with our staff, with their Rho Gammas. We'll walk over to Mendel Field together as a group. When we're at Mendel Field, they'll be given their bid cards. We'll do a fun little countdown. They'll open their bid cards and then they can see which organization they've just joined and join their new sisters in that bid day celebration. We do spend probably about an hour on Mendel Field taking pictures, celebrating. We have a DJ, all of that fun stuff. So that's all great and fun. And then after that, the chapters all do individual and independent bid day celebrations, typically off campus. We have some groups that go to hibachi dinners together. I have another group that went roller skating last year. We have one group that always does a tour of Philly. So they get buses and they go to like the Rocky statue and they go get cheesesteaks from Pat's and Gino's and all of those different things. So there's some sort of celebration activity that they'll do that afternoon. Hopefully they are back home in plenty of time to get a good night's sleep because classes start the very next day for them. So we plan our event, our bid day experience in the afternoon so that we give them enough time to be able to go do all those fun things and then also hopefully feel prepared and prepped for the semester to start right away the following day. So that's kind of what our recruitment week looks like. I do want to chat a little bit about what might happen if your student isn't matched in the recruitment process. Either they withdraw from the experience or they participate in the single intentional preferencing that we talked about. And so they were unable to be matched. So I want to kind of talk through those options too. First off, if that happens, that student is called directly by her Rho Gamma. So privately, obviously before the bid day experience takes place, we don't ever create a situation in which a woman is finding out publicly that she has not been extended any invitations or anything like that. We want to make sure that we treat that conversation with the care and the concern that it deserves. We know that that's an undesirable outcome for both her and for us in this process. So the Rho Gammas will call them independently, privately, and make sure that they are made aware of the different options that they have and that they're connected with any support resources that they may need as well. Some options that they might review if they are not able to join through the structured process and that we would talk with them about if we're in that situation are on the screen here. The first is SNAP bidding. You may have heard of this if you have affiliation with an organization. SNAP bidding is rare for our campus. I will go ahead and say that off the jump. It is only utilized if one of our organizations has not met their quota of new members through the structured recruitment matching process. So if we've completed all of the matching and they still have space in their organization, then they would be eligible for SNAP bidding. It doesn't mean that they are guaranteed to do it, but they're eligible for it. SNAP bidding takes place between bid matching and bid day. So it's a really tight window, which is why they call it SNAP bidding, right? It happens quickly. So if that is the case, your student would be, if she has participated in the recruitment process at all, then they are eligible to be SNAP bidded. If they have been extended a SNAP bid, I make those phone calls directly to them to explain what that means, explain that process, and offer that bid to her. Usually we give them a little while to make a decision, not a long amount of time because bid day is coming up that afternoon, but usually 30, 45 minutes, an hour if they need it to call mom, talk to big sis, talk to their recruitment counselor, whatever they need to do to kind of help decide if that's a good choice for them. If they have accepted that bid, then they're welcome to join us for bid day that afternoon and jump right in with everybody else, and nobody knows any the wiser. So that's great. So that's an option. It is rare, but it could happen. So I want to be transparent about that. I would not recommend that you advise your student or that your student withdraws from the recruitment process and banks on snap bidding. Because it's rare, because it's done in small numbers, it's not an option that I would put my eggs in that basket for. So, but is potential. So one, again, be transparent about that. The other option is continuous open bidding, or COB, you might hear it referred to. And it's an option for women who don't match in the recruitment process as well. This year, one of our organizations, Alpha Gamma Delta, has opted to only utilize a continuous open bidding process, meaning that they will not participate in the structured recruitment program that I just described. So historically, Alpha Gamma just prefers a more natural, personal recruitment style, and that's exactly what COB is. It allows sisters and PNMs to meet up for coffee, hang out, come to programs and events on campus, do normal organic human things to build those relationships in a more organic way. So they plan to utilize continuous open bidding to recruit their spring new member class. And so anyone who was not matched or who withdrew from the structured recruitment this spring would be eligible to participate in that with them. And that will kick off right away, first day of classes. So they're welcome to connect with Alpha Gamma as well to explore what that might look like. And it might be a breath of fresh air after a challenging or tiring, perhaps, recruitment experience earlier in the week. So that is also an option for them if they're interested in, if they are not finding their home in the traditional recruitment process. With that, I think that is all that I have to share. We are about 10 minutes shy of the hour, so I want to just provide, these were some slides before about like some options for supporting your student. So if you attended our previous webinar, asking questions, hearing from them about what they are looking for in this experience, listening and validating any sort of concerns, questions, feelings or emotions that they're having in that experience, and encourage them to advocate for themselves. I feel like I've said it 10,000 times, but encourage them to ask questions. I am more than happy to answer their questions for them. No question is a silly question. This process is a little bit foreign if you're not in the thick of it. So I am happy to answer any questions that they have. Please send them my way. And you can do so by utilizing our contact information here. So I'll leave that on the screen briefly if you want to take any pictures or jot anything down. It's all on our website as well. But with that, I will go ahead and open it up for questions. We've got about 10 minutes, so I am happy to open it up. I know that Sarah has been helping out in the chat with some questions. I've seen that bubble pop up here and there, so I know that there have been a few coming in. Okay. I see one question that was just submitted. Does anyone ever not receive invitations to the second round, our philanthropy round, and or invitations to the preference round then following that? The answer is yes, but small numbers. Again, last year, we made one release between sisterhood and philanthropy. So one woman didn't get any invitations going into philanthropy rounds. After philanthropy round and going into preference round last year, we released 3. So out of 620 women that registered for our process, that is a pretty good number there that we're only releasing 4 out of that number. So that is, it's small numbers. It could happen. I would say that it is small and rare. So it's not something that I would be super concerned about, but I would be mindful of that it is a potential outcome there. The next question was about the event on November 10th that was mentioned by their student. I am not sure. Let me take a look at my calendar and see what's on the 10th. Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. That's actually a great thing to ask. So on the 10th, our Panhellenic also hosts a program called Mock Recruitment. So what we do, or what Panhellenic does, is we create a kind of a simulated recruitment experience. It is not anywhere near the experience that we just described, but want to help them prepare a little bit for what might take place or how that kind of process works. So we give them an opportunity to gather in one space, check in with a recruitment counselor, walk over to a chapter's recruitment room, practice lining up in alphabetical order, And we have our chapters then run some mock parties or recruitment rounds. So it's practice both for the chapters and for the PNMs to kind of get the feel of the program. And so they'll do 20-minute parties. It's truly just human beings in a room. There are no decorations, there are no tables, there are no programs, there are no voting, any of those things. It just helps them to practice what some of those conversations might feel like or might sound like, helps them to practice that experience of lining up and then finding your next recruitment room, just to kind of take the edge off of some of that unease that may take place. We want to make sure that we're transparent about what the process looks like. And so that's an opportunity for them to just get a little bit of a feel for it if it's something that's super foreign, or if they have any anxiety about what that process might look like. Participating or not participating has truly no impact on their recruitment experience in the spring in terms of like preferential treatment or anything of that nature. The chapters likely won't even remember names at that point because they're practicing things too. So it's just a good opportunity for them to, both entities, to have a little practice trial run, if you will. So yes, mock recruitment is the name of that. Okay. The next question, do athletes who have conflicts participate? How do they participate in the recruitment process? Yeah, that's a great question. We do offer the ability for them to participate virtually. It is a different recruitment experience, and one that is only reserved for folks like athletes. It won't just be because we have a family vacation or things like that. It needs to be something that is a university sponsored event or a religious holiday, something along those lines. But we will typically have them participate as a specific small group, and they will view videos that the chapters have prepared ahead of time about each of those rounds. So for the sisterhood round, the chapter is preparing currently a sisterhood video that will explain to them the values of their sisterhood, the expectations, why they chose their organization, things of that nature. And then the PNMs will be given 2 to 3 prompts that they will then record a video of themselves answering. So it'll be around the same conversation topic. So for that sisterhood round, the questions, I don't remember them off the top of my head, but broadly speaking, it's what sorts of things are you interested in? What things do you want to become involved in or are already involved in on campus? What are things that you're passionate about? What are you expecting to get out of a sorority? Why did you sign up for sorority recruitment? Things like that, so they can start to get to know one another. And the same preferencing process takes place for them as well. But there are videos each day that the PNMs are able to view, and then videos that they will record of themselves so that they can still participate in that mutual selection process. Yes.
Jen, somebody asked a question about the costs after the registration fee. Could you elaborate a little bit more on how the dues structures are presented to students during the recruitment process?
Yeah. So we have a PNM guidebook that they will have access to. It's an electronic guidebook that is sent to them. It will be on our website once it is completed, and then will be sent to them in their registration as well, in the registration confirmations. That gives a breakdown that's almost line by line what dues are for our organizations. So it typically outlines what their costs will be as a new member. We've talked about how that first semester is typically the most expensive one. So it breaks down what those one-time costs are, the initiation fee, a badge, all of those different things. And then it also provides a breakdown for what the active member dues are for their most recent semester, so that PNMs have an idea then of what like a standard, a typical future semester dues cost would look like. It is substantially cheaper in the following semester, so that is the light at the end of that tunnel, so to speak. But they do provide a breakdown in that process or in that guidebook. We also encourage them to talk about that in that opening round, in that sisterhood round. It's a requirement that it's somewhere in their presentation. And then honestly, if your student is someone who has questions about what the financial obligations are, ask. It is always a good thing to ask. It is not anything that's going to deter a chapter from extending membership to her. It is always looked at as, this woman is asking us about what the investment is in this experience because she's serious about wanting to join. So she wants to know, can I make this happen? What does this look like, right? If you think about it in terms of like buying a car, if I'm not interested in the car, I'm not going to ask what the price is because I'm not buying it. If I am interested in the car, then I want to know what the financial expectations are for me because I want to know if it's within my realm of possibilities because I'm interested. So always a good sign, always encourage them to ask those questions. And it's broken down in that guidebook ahead of time for them, reviewed in that first round of the recruitment process as well. But it's never a bad idea to ask that question if she has it. I think that's all of our questions that I can see.
That's everything that I have.
Yay. Okay.
Yay.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the support that y'all provide to your students. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Our emails, phone numbers are on our website. We are always happy to be a resource, and please feel free to send your students our way as well if they have questions or concerns too. Thanks so much for being here.